Hello, good evening, and welcome to what is the penultimate race of the first season of the Nations Cup here in Mexico City. I am Chris Cavanagh, your host for the series, and you join us at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodriguez circuit in the centre of Mexico City. 2,600 metres above sea level, the air is thin, and it's often a circuit which is known for putting cars to the test, especially with this rendition of the circuit with the Perotada fully included, like the good old days. So there's 4 races today at this great circuit. Let's start with Division 2 with the sprint races, but before we get to that, let's see what the standings look like for Division 2. Felix Rosenqvist leads the way in the championship only by 14 points to Sebastian Buemi, and Pato Award is very close behind. A lot of people have said going into this season that it's going to be pretty much between those three and maybe a few others, and it's certainly showing. Kevin Magnussen, though, 30 points behind on 181. Wincup and Power next, with Arthur Leclerc in 7th place on 138, 73 behind. Raffaele Marcello joins him on 73 points behind, and then Felipe Albuquerque 84 points behind. Now, everyone below him, so from 10th down, has been numerically eliminated from this championship now, for the title anyway. Antonio Felix Acosta is the first one out, that on 88 points. Robert Wickens on 90, Christian Lundgaard on 91, Antonio Giovinazzi on 96, and then we can see Roman De Angelis on 95 for Canada, Felipe Nasr on 85, Stefan Riquelme 83, Antonio Fuoco on 72 points, Marcus Ericsson, bit of a disparity from his teammate on 65 points, Kevin van der Linde 43, both the Argentinian cars now, Fenestraz and Verone. Rafael Vercamer is hoping to get a strong result in front of his home crowd here. There sits in 37 points on 22nd place. Leonardo Fornaroli on 36, Rafael Camara on 34, along with Sheldon van der Linde, and then James Hinskes on 18 points. And then at the bottom end of the grid is drivers who have not exactly done well. Matt Hiver-Ragunathan on 10 points. Filipe Drugovich, who's only done the first few races, also on 10 points, but Rain Carter is the only one on 0. And looking to the nation standings, Switzerland going into this round with a comfortable lead on 335 points, 34 ahead of Denmark, and Australia now is in 3rd place and 56, but Sweden is oh so close on 276 points, only 3 away from that much needed promotion spot. It's been very dicey from the beginning of this championship, and let's see how it goes now. Portugal, could they get an outside chance there on 85 points behind and 250? Canada is in 6th place at 234, with Mexico 232, Monaco on 221, and then Italy on 131. And now the rest of the teams here have been numerically eliminated. Brazil on 138 points, Argentina 82, South Africa 77, and India with just 10. And let's see what the grid looks like for the first race of the day with the Division 2 sprint. Jamie Wincup starts on pole for the sprint for Australia. Raffaele Marcello next alongside him in 2nd place. And then we have Robert Wickens in 3rd, Stefan Riquelme 4th, Nico Barone with a very impressive qualifying in 5th, Marcus Ericsson in 6th place, Christian Lundgaard for Denmark in 7th, Arthur Leclerc in 8th, Kevin Magnussen in 9th, Felix Rosenqvist in 10th, Roman De Angelis in 11th, Will Power in 12th, Antonio Felix Acosta first of Portugal 13th, and then Sebastian Buemi in 14th. He wants to hope to get higher up on the tables there. Filipe Albuquerque in 15th, Sasha Fenestraz in 16th, and the 2 Brazilian cars, Nasr and Drugovich, in 17th and 18th respectively. Sheldon van der Linde in 19th, Rafael Gomez in 20th. Not a good qualifying for him in front of his home crowd. Antonio Fuoco for Italy in 21st, Kevin van der Linde 22nd, Giovinazzi 23rd. Then the IndyCars of Matt Hiver-Ragunathan and Rain Carter 24th and 25th. And because of Pato Award's penalty that he received at the last round, a 10-place grid penalty, has to start at the back for the sprint. But it's a long run to the first corner, as we all know. And to show you that, here is Ryan Ferris for the first commentary of the day.
First race of the day here in Mexico City, and it is Division 2 sprint race with Jamie Wincup on pole and Raffaele Marcello on 2nd position. And as we go away, as the lights go out, we've got one of the longest drives down to the first corner of the season. It's a great getaway from Wincup. Brilliant getaway actually, with Marcello jumping into the slipstream. Riquelme's came up into 3rd position. And Wickens is coming through, but Marcello has taken the lead. So Raffaele Marcello takes the lead here into turn 1 through the chicane. Everyone's been fairly clean there, no incidents as what we're used to here. Oh, as I say that, Giovinazzi needs a new front wing, so Not everyone through as cleanly as we thought, but it is Marcello from Wing Cup and Robert Wickens up into third position, who's just got ahead of Stefan Ricalmi in fourth position. Now, as they come through the very tight and twisty S's, this is the original layout of the Mexico City circuit. What some may argue the proper layout, as Wing Cup is definitely in the slipstream now of Marcello, and he's going to dive down the inside. Is he going to go through this time round as Marcello goes round the outside? And just about holds on to the lead from Wing Cup, but Wing Cup's going to have a good drive down, hopefully, but he's been held up a bit by Marcello, and Wickens thought about going through. In fact, he is going to try and go through on Wing Cup. Ricalmi's going to try and go through on Wickens, and they're almost going to be three abreast as they come down into turn one, but here comes Wickens down the inside, and that's second position for the Canadian. So Giovinazzi's made it, and that's Ricalmi. So Ricalmi goes off and smashes into the side of Lundgaard. So out goes Ricalmi. What happened there? We only cut to the start of that, but as you can see, Ricalmi trying to dive down the inside there of Wing Cup, doesn't quite make it. He gets hit from behind, and that sent him off. He's got no real control on the grass, and he comes across and takes out Lundgaard. But Lundgaard still looks to be okay there. So we look from behind. So there's Lundgaard right behind. Tries to send it down the inside and sends him off. And with a front wing broken under the front wheels as well, not much that Ricalmi could have done to save that. But Lundgaard has got all four wheels on his wagon, so he may be able to rejoin, but I believe he will be getting a disqualification for that. So as for the race, there is Stefan Ricalmi, who's having a good run of things there. It seems as though Monaco had managed to hit the setup correctly this weekend. I think quite a few teams were a bit mistaken with their setup, and there's confirmation disqualification and 6 points on his licence for Christian Lundgaard. So further on back, as we look at Antonio Felix da Costa, as Wickens tries to go through this time on Marcello, but Marcello still hangs on as Arthur Leclerc's going to also have a go, and they're all side by side. Somehow Raghunathan is almost up on the fringes of the top 10, so must be having some form of a nosebleed there. But here is Wickens now back under pressure from Wing Cup, and Wing Cup goes through into second. Further on in the background, this is Verone going through on Nasser, but Nasser's going to try and tough it out. But after seeing what happened with Lundgaard, thinks better of it. But as a result of the chaos and shenanigans between Ricalmi and Lundgaard, that's given these three a big gap between themselves and Nasser. And Verone's going backwards. What's happened to Verone? Nico Verone going backwards, as you can see there. That's meant that Sheldon van der Linde is up into 5th position. So South Africa in the top 5. We haven't seen that in a while. And Verone is out, and he's lost. And that's a big hit as well there. That's where Da Costa is at. Actually, no, Felipe Albuquerque. So he'd already lost his front wing and wheel by that point, but we weren't quite quick enough to cut back to see what the cause of that was. But another retirement due to an accident, and it's Nico Verone, who once again was having a good drive there up in the top 5, and it seems as though some teams have taken a gamble on the setup, and it's paid off. Meanwhile, Marcello sets the fastest lap of the race out in the lead. Here's Antonio Felix da Costa. He's running side by side there. With Rosenqvist, and obviously Rosenqvist in the championship fight, leading the championship at the moment from Sebastian Buemi. Buemi down in 13th position and not scoring points in this race. It's only the top 10. As Rosenquist tries and has a go back at Da Costa, but not possible to pass there. Here's Giovinazzi, who's going off, and is he going to lose a front wing? No, he just about hangs on. But this is going to be a long old sprint race for Giovinazzi, who's more than 20 seconds off the back end of the next car ahead, and that's Buemi struggling there. He's got Albuquerque all over the back of him. And Robert Wickens now sets the fastest lap in pursuit of Whincup for that second position. So down the start-finish straight as we look to Buemi, who's got Felipe Albuquerque all over the back of him. And he's going to surely take this 13th position away. And he does so. But back at the front, Wickens unable to get through on Whincup this time. He's setting fast lap times as Marcus Ericsson tries it down the inside of Felipe Dragovic, but unable to get through that time. He's got Will Power there in 11th position and Arthur Leclerc in 12th as well. And it looks as though a possible mistake there for Power, and he's now got Leclerc all over the back of him as they come through these slightly slower sweeping S's to what we're used to. And then down the straight up to the famous Perotada. And Leclerc is just going to hang in there. But it also looks like Ericsson just up ahead has got a bit wrong-footed coming out of the Perotada. And now they're swarming all over him. It's almost 3 abreast now as they come down the start-finish straight. And it looks like Leclerc's going to get the power of them. There's Power on the outside. He's got through on Ericsson. He's going to go through on Leclerc as well. So Will Power... It looked as though Leclerc was going to mug him. Or mug the pair of them. But then Power manages to get a secondary slipstream off of them. And takes the pair of them back. So, better result there from the Australian. Obviously, both the Australians struggling last time out in Sao Paulo, having taken the wrong setup choice. But things are looking a lot better for them this weekend. But meanwhile, Raffaele Marcello continues to lead, and Wickens has got through on Whincup for that second position as he was putting in some fairly fast lap times. So, can he go about chasing down Marcello in the lead? He's already starting to gap Whincup, but Whincup's going to have a nice slipstream down into turn 1, but he's not quite close enough to make a move. In the meantime, Felipe Nasr is catching, but another driver making moves through the field is Felix Rosenquist, so championship leader, up in 7th position ahead of Da Costa. Obviously, Pato and Ward not troubling anyone, even in the top 15, having started from the last on the grid, as De Angelis tries to go through on Fuoco for 16th. Ward's managed to make his way up into 18th, and actually other championship contender in the form of Magnussen is behind O'Ward in this situation, so he's not going to be scoring many points. Buemi's not scoring points, and the only person out of that top 4 in the title fight is Rosenquist that's in the points, and he's leading the championship, so not looking good at the moment for the rest of those in the top 4. And it's an electrical issue for Fenestraz. And this is Rosenquist tucked up behind Villagomez, but he's not going to be tucked up behind him for much longer. And through into 6th position goes the Swede. He's had a fairly storming fight through the field. 6th position, he's got quite a bit of time to make up, to catch up Sheldon van der Linde, but there's still plenty of laps left, 10 to go. Still chances to win as we see Wickens now all over the back end of Marcello. So he's going to come round the Perotada. Out of the races award. So what has happened there? He's collided there, by the looks of things, with Magnussen. But it's a transmission failure. So obviously an issue there for award. And it looks as though Magnussen, I think it said Lundgaard there. As through is, well, Villagomez having a bit of head and shoulder there. But here comes Wickens on Marcello as they go side by side into turn 1. And that's Wickens through, is it? Yes, it is. So there goes the lead for the Canadian. Marcello unable to fight back there. Some of the teams going very strong on the top speed setup. And it looks like Marcello's about to miss out again. No, he isn't. Whincup has to sit there in 3rd for a little longer. But here comes Ericsson down the inside of Da Costa, but it seems as though you've got to be very committed to try and pull off a move there. And a bit of a train now forming behind Villagomez for that 7th position. Here's Felipe Dragovic. He's going to try and have a look down the inside, but I don't think that's going to work though. It nearly worked the last time round, but it didn't this time. And that's just caused the field to bunch up together. It's a slipstream train down this start-finish straight. And so it's all kicking off. Power's gone through Leclerc. Boemi's down in 13th, and they're side by side through turn 1 there. There's yellow flags out. So who's off? It's Sheldon van der Linde from 6th position. 5th position. So off he goes. That's going to be another position there for Rosenqvist. So he goes through. He's going to be stuck there for some time. Here comes the big field of 6th place, Villagomez, all the way down to Albuquerque in 13th. So a 7-car train there. And if he doesn't get it moving, I was about to say, if he doesn't get moving anytime soon, he would be at risk of stalling the engine. But he's back on. He goes the wrong way and then spin turns. So going a bit of a long way round for that. And also, Whincup has gone for on Marcello. And Marcello feels the car's quick. And side by side again there, Villagomez and Dragovic. Dragovic unable to get through. Here's Giovinazzi that we're looking back at. But what we want to look at is this slipstream train down into turn 1. And that's Nazarov in 4th. And he's spun back onto the course in front of Rosenqvist. So another position for Rosenqvist. And here comes that gaggle of cars coming round. It's now back to Sheldon van der Linde this time, or Kelvin van der Linde. So that's 5th place Villagomez down to 14th. But Neza is going to have to wait a long time. The 2 Team India cars coming through. There's Karthikeyan, and spins round is Neza and comes on ahead of Sheldon van der Linde. So what was looking to be a very good result for the Brazilian, is going to have to hope he can come up with something a bit better later on in the feature race. Marcello fairly comfortable now in that third position. I can't see him making any headway back. And there's Rosenquist up into fourth. He's been a very lucky boy in that he's pretty much made two. Although for a moment then I had a bit of a heart attack for a moment then, because it just came up saying Rosenquist transmission failure, but he's definitely still moving along down that start-finish straight. Here is that long gaggle of cars that we've been saying about. Villagomez all the way down to Calvin van der Linde, but I think De Angelis has joined this group now as well, so it's a 14-car train. And Buemi's up into 12th now, but still a couple positions away from scoring a point. But as it stands, it's still only Rosenquist scoring points from that top four in the championship. Villagomez has done very well to hold on to that 5th position. Somehow, although he's under increasing pressure from the guys behind, no one has managed to slipstream past him down that start-finish straight. Although Power's having a look now, he's going to come into the Paratada side by side again, still unable to get through. But Power looks as though he's now going to come under pressure now from Da Costa, and Da Costa's got a good run here, but so has Leclerc, but Leclerc unable to find a way through. But Power now demoted down to 7th position, and that slightly scrappy move from Da Costa has now cost him a couple of car lengths between himself and Villagomez. So Villagomez lives on for another lap at least. Here's Robert Wickens, your race leader. And although he is worrying about Whincup closing, the gap is just shy of 3 seconds as Marcus Ericsson has a big old lock up there through the S's, comes on just ahead of De Angelis that is there. Which has promoted Buemi another position, so he's 1 position away from scoring a point. Buemi and Albuquerque have actually been swapping and changing positions fairly regularly. And as I say so, down the inside attempts Buemi on Albuquerque, but unable to do so. But he's now tucked up in the slipstream. Albuquerque's going to force him outright. He goes defensive into turn 1. And it was going to be last of late breakers, and Buemi does the switch back and goes down the inside, and that's a brilliant move there by the Swiss driver. Now, just up ahead, Power being well and truly beaten up. As you remember earlier, at one point he was the first car behind Villagomez, and now he's found himself shuffled down to 9th position. Here's Drugovich in 8th position. Good going there for the Brazilian. Further on up, Arthur Leclerc. It definitely looks as though he's got good pace here, but he's being held up by both. Well, Villagomez is being held up. Well, not at all actually. It's Da Costa being held up by Villagomez, but Da Costa not going for the best opportunities here. And Villagomez doing a brilliant defensive job here in his home Grand Prix. And Villagomez slightly wrong footing Da Costa there, and that's allowing Leclerc to draw alongside the Portuguese driver. Is he going to have a go down into turn 1? Yes, he is. And through in the background is Buemi going through on Drugovich and Power. So 2 positions there for the Swiss driver. And the thing is there, and actually Power's managed to get back through on Buemi there. The problem for Team Switzerland is they did go a bit more top speed biased. I think some of the teams were caught a little bit off guard with the setup, as here comes Wickens and off goes Wickens! Robert Wickens goes off at the final corner, and he had no pressure at all. He was starting to push. He was getting a bit worried that Whincup was fastly approaching, and he pulled out an extra half a second on Whincup and just pushing far too hard into the final corner. That promotes Whincup into the lead. Marcello in second, and Felix Rosenquist, who's just been going about his own business, up into third. So that's 3 positions he's gained through other drivers going off the road ahead. So very lucky indeed there for Rosenquist. Buemi is now up into 8th position, and Da Costa still not past Villagomez, and battling in the background there goes Buemi through on both Power and Leclerc. So up into 6th place now is the Swiss driver, and because he's carrying a little bit more top speed but not as much downforce, as long as the pack continues to get stuck behind Villagomez, it's allowing Buemi to stay with the field and get those important overtakes done down the start-finish straight. Although if it wasn't for Villagomez, I think Buemi would be a little further down the field now, because we'd have a bit more field spread, but it was always referred to as the Trulli train, but it's the Villagomez train here in Mexico. And it is going back as Leclerc goes off as well. So Arthur Leclerc's done the exact same mistake there. He was under pressure from Will Power for that 7th position and off into the barriers. But it looks as though he's survived this one. Just about. I'm not sure. I can't see from that distance if there's Rosenquist going off into the barriers. What is going on here in Mexico? Rosenquist, who I said hasn't put a foot wrong and has just been going about his business, no pressure, in absolute no man's land, and even he makes a mistake there. But luckily for Rosenquist, as he was in no man's land, because Villagomez has caused so much of a pace difference, he still managed to come back onto the track and rejoin in 3rd position. So that was almost a door open there for Buemi, who's the closest championship contender in the standings, with Rosenquist second, Rosenquist first and Buemi second. And they're also the closest contenders at the moment in form when it comes to points between them. But here is Da Costa. Is he finally going to find a way through on Villagomez? It looks like he is, but is he going to get the job done under the brakes? Yes, he does, finally, for Da Costa. Now, this is the final lap of the race, so I don't think he's going to be close enough to close in on Rosenquist. Marcello all alone there in second, and Whincup in a fairly happy 1st position on this final lap, as they come through the S's one last time. It's just the Perotada to go, and he's not drifted out wide. He's managed to come through, and Jamie Whincup comes across the line to win the Division 2 sprint race. Marcello comes in second, and we got to wait a little bit now for Rosenquist to negotiate the Perotada, and he does so with ease to finish 3rd position. Now we wait for Da Costa, who's put in quite a shift against us. Buemi's going to try and come across the line and doesn't quite get it. We almost got Villagomez across the line there, and Power almost thought he was going to get Buemi. Here's Arthur Leclerc after going off earlier on. He's managed to collect it all back up and finish 16th. Actually, that looks like, is that? It is. Raghunathan coming across the line with a Formula Ford. So we didn't see what happened there. But confirmation there. Jamie Whincup wins here in the Division 2 sprint race ahead of Raffaele Marcello and Felix Rosenqvist finishing third. Antonio Felix da Costa managed to get through into fourth ahead of Villagomez in fifth. Buemi comes across the line in sixth with Will Power in seventh. Marcus Ericsson was 8th ahead of Roman De Angelis in 9th, and Felipe Drugovich takes the final point there in 10th position. Felipe Albuquerque was 11th ahead of Kelvin Magnussen in 12th, and Kelvin van der Linde was 13th. Further down the order, Antonio Fuoco was 14th ahead of Arthur Leclerc, Mahir Raghunathan with only, no wings on his wagon in 16th, Sheldon van der Linde 17th, Antonio Giovinazzi came back into 18th, with Fenestraz in 19th, Felipe Nasr 20th, and Karthikeyan the final car across the line in 21st. We then go to the retirements of Robert Wickens crashing out of the lead for 22nd, O'Ward with a transmission failure, Varone with an accident as well, Riquelme also with the accident, with Christian Langard being disqualified. So very dramatic times here in Mexico, and we've still got 3 more races to go, so it's back over to Chris.
Well, he could almost call Felix Rosenqvist Kylie Minogue after that. You should feel so lucky. With loads of other people, in particular Paolo O'Ward, having problems, and a lot of other people tripping over themselves, but Felix Rosenqvist has his own incident and doesn't lose a place, which is very fortunate on his part. And also for Jamie Whincup, brilliant victory for him, and it keeps Australia in the constructors' fight. But now we can look ahead to Division 1 and see what drama that can conjure up. But let's look at the driver standings for this, and yeah, it's very, very close going into this round. Naoki Yamamoto on 175 points leads the championship, despite not winning a single race, sprint or feature. Incredible, really. Only 5 ahead of Simon Pagenaud for France. Philip Hansen in third, only 6 behind René Rast, who's been on a good run of form lately, driving-wise, only 9 points behind. Scott Dixon and Shane Van Gisbergen are never too far away from any championship, I swear. Scott Dixon on 160, Van Gisbergen on 155. Alex Palou, you can never count him out on 155. Stoffel Vandoorne, who's been on a charge in the last couple of rounds. He's got himself right in the title fight. Bear in mind that he missed the first few races of the season. Think of that. And then you got Kamui Kobayashi, who's been having some good races of late, only 49 behind. Sandy Stuvik, 119. Nick De Vries, 115 points. Joseph Newgarden in 12th on 112. Daniel Yokodair on 92. And then Paul Di Resta, the last man who's in title contention numerically, on 91 points, 84 behind. Then the rest of them are eliminated. Robin Frans of Netherlands at 83. Sebastian Bourdais, 79. Alex Dunn for Ireland at 71. Carl Larson, 68. James Collado, 57. Dries Van Tor, 54. Elfyn Evans of Wales at 47 points. Andre Lotter at 45. Jack Aiken, 44. Max Hart, 34. And then Natalie Leeward-Navarro in 25 points, 25th. Ella Lloyd on 22 points. And then further down the order, Charles Wirtz had a great first round in his Nations Cup debut last time out, on 19 points. Nick Heidfeld's been struggling for Germany on 12 points. And then further down the order, you see drivers who have been replaced across the season, with quite a lot of drivers on 0 points. But now we can look at the more important nations standings. New Zealand are in front on 315 points, only 9 ahead of Japan with 306. There's a bit of a drop away now to France on 249 points, and Spain 247, Germany 234, Belgium 227, England 226, Netherlands 201, still numerically in it with the USA, the last team who are in the hunt for the championship, 180, with a heck of a lot of fortune needed for that one. Basically, it would be first and second in both races, and everyone retires. But the interesting point now comes at the relegation battle. Thailand only 9 points ahead of Scotland, who are in the relegation drop zone. It's going to be very interesting with just 2 rounds to go between those two. And then Ireland on 105, and then Wales on 69. Now let's have a look at the sprint grid itself. Alex Palou of Spain starts on pole with Naoki Yamamoto, the title leader, beside him. Ella Lloyd for Wales with a great qualifying and a good position there for the sprint in third. Scott Dixon in fourth, with Philip Hansen, one of the title chargers, in fifth. Charles Verts, another great qualifying, in sixth. Shane van Gisbergen in 7th place, with Kamui Kobayashi in 8th, Stoffel van Dorn in 9th, René Rast in 10th, Nick de Vries in 11th place with Nick Heidfeld in 12th, Daniel Nugedeo in 13th with Elfyn Evans in 14th, Joseph Newgarden for the United States of America in 15th, Robin France in 16th, Simon Pagenaud and Sebastian Bourdais for France 17th and 18th, not a good qualifying for them. Paul de Resta for Scotland in 19th, James Collado 20th, Sandy Stewart in 21st, Carl Kirkwood 22nd, Alex Dunn 23rd, with Max Hart in 24th, and you got Jack Aitken in 25th and Natalie Niwatala in 26th. And now for the second race of the day, back to Ryan Ferris.
Division 2 was chaotic. What is Division 1 going to bring us? It's Alex Palou on pole from championship leader Yamamoto in 2nd position, and as the lights come on, we wait and see what this one has in store for us as they get away. It looked like a good getaway there from Yamamoto, but a better second phase there for Palou. Dixon up into 3rd position, and Hart's already off. Max Hart already off. It's not been a coming together with the two teammates, has it? No. So hit from behind. I feel like that was a Team Thailand car coming from behind. And it's Lee Wataraga, I think. Oh no, it's Aitken, so my apologies. But Jack Aitken takes out Hart off the start there. So Palou leads and Dixon goes up into 2nd. So Dixon up into 2nd position ahead of Yamamoto. Stoffel van Dorn's got a good getaway with Charles Weerts in 5th as well. So it's Belgium 4th and 5th. So Charles Weerts, who's only in his 2nd weekend here and continuing to build off of that strong performance he had there in Brazil, although it was not past the first lap yet. So not going to try and blow his trumpet too much for the young rookie. But it is Palou who leads ahead of Dixon and Yamamoto. All three of them here are in the championship battle. As I said, Yamamoto is the championship leader, but Alex Palou a little bit further on down in 7th position in the championship. As there we go, we see one of the Team Germany cars of René Rast on Junkerdey, and he's going to try around the outside into turn 1. I don't think that's going to work though, but has to duck back in as through comes Van Gisbergen, who takes both Collado and Kobayashi into turn 1. So strong stuff there from the Kiwi. Further on up, you've got Van Dorn challenging Dixon there for his 3rd position. So as one Kiwi finds his way up through the field, is actually Collado's managed to get back through on Van Gisbergen. Palou continuing to lead. And as the team say, he's definitely got pace here. They're saying let's go get the win, but Yamamoto, although somehow he's leading the championship, hasn't got a race win to his name yet this season. And that was Van Dorn trying to get through on Dixon. And it just seems as though if you try to make a move there into the Perotada, it's just not going to work out. And so now he's found himself under pressure from Charles Weerts for that 4th position. Weerts on the outside, but Van Dorn trying to hold on. I thought for a moment then Weerts was going to go through, but Van Dorn said not today, shuts the door on his young teammate, and now has Hansen to deal with. Hansen currently 3rd position at the moment in the championship. Here's Newgarden, closes the door on Kobayashi, and this looks to be an issue there for Stuvik. So Sandy Stuvik generally Thailand's only real hope for performance and results here in the championship, as they do need those results to stay in the championship. But as it stands at the moment, Scotland aren't really challenging, but there's some side-by-side action there, and that's, I think that was Bourdais there with Heidfeld, and well, Simon Pagenaud down in 20th position. That's no good for him in the championship. Currently sat in second in the championship, only a few points off of Yamamoto, but here's Frines now under pressure from Evans, but here comes Pagenaud, who's going to take the pair of them. So Pagenaud up into 17th position. Evans is going to dive down the inside and takes a pair of them. Brilliant stuff there from the Welshman. So we go back to the front with Alex Palou, who's coming under increasing pressure now from Yamamoto behind. Hansen also showing pace there in 5th position, but he's already gone through on Charles Weerts. He's now got Stoffel Van Dorn to deal with now. And Van Dorn's dropped off the back of Dixon. Although saying that, no, we're looking at the wrong car. So Dixon under pressure from Van Dorn, Palou under pressure from Yamamoto. So this is getting quite interesting now at the front. But with Yamamoto making that early on move, it's affected any chance of him taking the lead. But 3rd position now is Van Dorn. He's just gone ahead of Dixon. So he got a good exit out of the Piratada, and obviously has slightly longer legs down that start-finish straight than Dixon. So Dixon down to 4th. But he still looks as though he's going to try and fight back. But further on in the background is Hansen. So Palou now starting to form a bit of a train behind him. He leads from Yamamoto, and you've got Van Dorn and Dixon fairly close behind. And as the team have already said, Hansen is also closing in at a rapid rate of knots as they come through the Piratada one more time, and Yamamoto is looking as though didn't quite get a good enough drive, but he's in the slipstream now, and you can see the advantage there of the slipstream. He pops out the slipstream, but is he going to go for the dummy down the inside? Yes, he is. And that is the lead there for Yamamoto as Rast has gone out. So Rast, he's done exactly the same as what we saw from Wickens earlier on, and that's going to not help in his championship challenge as out goes René Rast. The pressure starting to get to some of these championship contenders. This is the second or penultimate race weekend before we go to the final. And a few mistakes starting to creep in. So this is the battle for 16th position. Bourdais and Frines. And someone's off there and rejoining pretty badly there. That's De Vries, so he's gone completely off onto the grass, hits the barrier, and just rolls the car back into the track. I don't know if there was some form of mechanical there for De Vries, but although it says Nick De Vries of Germany, I don't think he's quite of German. He's not too far away in the Netherlands, but nevertheless, he's not from Germany. As Van Dorn comes through, or tries to go through on Palou. And Palou, you can see how Yamamoto has just cleared off up the road. Van Dorn's going to waste no time trying to get through. Dixon's going to try and make it 3 abreast down the start-finish straight. So Nick de Vries out of the race there, and through goes Van Dorn on Palou. Palou still just about manages to hang on ahead of Dixon, but I feel, unless Dixon, because Dixon's actually got Hansen very, very close to his gearbox. And Mexico continuing to be as chaotic as it was in the Division 2 race. It's a fairly comfortable lead, although... And that's Kobayashi off! So what's happened to Kobayashi? You can see Shane van Gisbergen just ahead. And Kobayashi's going to come through and gets it all wrong. Across the green. And oh! Hits straight into van Gisbergen there! So Kobayashi completely loses control of the car, and then there's no real tarmac runoff, it's complete grass, so you can't get the car stopped as soon as you get onto it, and bang, straight into him, and that's gotta hurt. You can hear the engines cut out, so that's Van Gisbergen out. I think Kobayashi's still running somehow. They must make him pretty strong there in Japan. But I feel for Kobayashi, as you can see there, disqualification and 6 points. And from what was just a mere mistake and a run-on, these old-style circuits, they're not very forgiving. Most of these newer ones would have had some sort of tarmac runoff, but no saving grace there for Kobayashi or Van Gisbergen. But here is Dixon, who's under pressure now. He's had Hansen come through. He's got Wirtz all over the back of him, and Lloyd's joined in, I think, from what I could see there. And down the inside here comes Heidfeld into 10th position, and a solitary point there for the German. Here's Collado further on up the road. He's all over the back end of Danny Juncadella. But yeah, it is indeed. Ella Lloyd has caught up onto the back of Charles Wirtz for 6th position. Dixon's just up ahead of him, and Hansen's gone through into that 4th position ahead of Dixon. But Lloyd is going brilliant stuff at the moment for Team Wales. She comes out of the Pelotada, and that's a brilliant get out there for Lloyd, although almost too good, I think, and that's possibly cost her in making a move on Wirtz. She's weaving in and out, and down the inside comes Ella Lloyd on Charles Wirtz and takes 6th position. Wirtz goes off wide, actually. Paul di Resta there with an electrical issue, so not ideal for Team Scotland in their fight for to stay out of relegation. And Yamamoto now under pressure now from Stoffel Van Dorn. Van Dorn's caught up big time onto the Japanese driver. So come through the S's. Van Dorn, who has been incredibly strong in this second half of the season. Van Dorn's going to try and go for the move at the inside of the Pelotada, but that's not going to work. Kobayashi hangs it out around the outside. But Van Dorn with another good exit, and he draws side by side down the start-finish straight. There's going to be no coming back surely for Yamamoto, but Yamamoto switches back down the inside. No, thought about it, but not quite close enough. In the meantime, Hansen takes Palou for 3rd position, so Hansen, as we said, one to look out for here. And Dixon, all the while, has been shuffled towards the back end of this pack, so Lloyd's managed to get through on Dixon for 5th position. There's a possibility that Lloyd may even get Palou for 4th. But the battle for the lead, not too far away. And the gearbox has gone once again for Sebastian Bourdais, so Team France not having the best of reliability there, as they've suffered for most of the season. You remember both cars retiring from a potential 1-2 in Monza earlier on in the season. I'm pretty sure Marcus Johansson doesn't need reminding of that painful day. But here's Ella Lloyd all over the back of Palou now for 4th position. She's tucked well up in the slipstream. He's going to try and go for a dive down the inside, and does so. Palou tries to fight back, but has got nothing to respond with. Ella Lloyd up into 4th position, and a potential podium on the horizon. So Palou now into the clutches of Scott Dixon. But Van Dorn very much taking control of this race, very much like he's done so in the past already. Yamamoto, who looked as though he was on for a dominant win today, and his first win of the season, that looks like that's not going to be happening. And here's Dixon trying to come back at Palou, but unable to get through. But is he going to be close enough? He's made a bit of a Horlicks to the exit there, has Dixon, so that's going to cost him down into turn 1. And here's Stoffel Van Dorn actually caught up onto the back of what I think is actually Paul de Resta. So that's not what Van Dorn's going to want to see, and it's going to be holding up the Belgian driver. Obviously, de Resta not long pitted, so on fresh tyres. Actually, sorry, it's Jack Aitken. So here's Aitken, and Aitken's not allowing him through, so this is allowing Yamamoto to coast up onto the back end of Van Dorn. And this is also allowing Hansen to catch up as well. Robin Freins is out of the race now. So that, to me, a big old shunt, but I feel that's a mechanical failure there. And indeed it is. Another transmission gone. But there's Paul de Resta in 18th. So it's Aitken down in 20th, and still unable to get through. This has allowed Yamamoto back onto the rear end of Van Dorn. He's going to be well and truly in the slipstream as they come down the start-finish straight. Aitken's pulled away. Van Dorn's not going to be getting a slipstream, but Yamamoto is, so down side by side. Briefly there, Yamamoto weaves this way, he weaves that way. Still unable to find a way through. Is he going to try and have a dive into turn 1 this time? No. But all the while, in the background, Hansen, 3rd position, getting even closer to these two. Van Dorn will be getting furious now with Aitken ahead. In certain sections, Van Dorn's definitely the quicker, but Aitken on those fresh new tyres, and this is costing him big time. As you can see, Hansen pretty much with him now. Lloyd isn't too far behind either. So they come through the S's. He's going to try and go through, and he does go through this time. Yamamoto is going to try and follow through, but he's unable to. But through goes the pair of them this time. So really not helped Van Dorn. It's not helped Yamamoto this time, because now he's got Hansen all over the back end of him now. There's only a few laps left to go, but Hansen's now pulling out the slipstream. He's now side by side with Yamamoto, and it looks as though, according to the timing tower, he is definitely through this time. Yamamoto unable to come back through. And for a moment there, Aitken was trying to come back through on Yamamoto, but all the top three still together. Less than a second covers them. And Hansen's going to pull Yamamoto along with him. Here's Alex Palou in 5th position. He's trying to fend off Charles Weerts. Team offering words of encouragement. Palou, who was leading this race at one point, down in 5th, holding on ahead of Weerts and Dixon. But here is the battle at the front. Here's Lloyd finally coming through up into, well, still in 4th position, managing to get past Aitken as we come down at the start-finish straight. Is Hansen close enough for a move? Van Dorn's taking the defensive, but still a fair way away is Hansen as they come into the braking zone, but still staying close enough. 3 laps remain. Can Hansen find a way through on the Belgian driver? And this will, if things stay the same, as Lloyd coming under attack now from Aitken. That's definitely going to be costing Lloyd, and Lloyd would not be happy about that. Here's Juncker there, down in 9th position. He's fallen off a bit from the pack ahead, but still on for 2 points. There's Dixon still trying to find a way through on Palou. Weerts has dropped behind Dixon now, and Collada's now drifted up onto the back of them, but Weerts is having another look on Dixon. He's going to try and take that position off of the Kiwi. Weerts, who's been a great addition to this championship in these last few rounds, goes through now on Dixon for 6th position. Now, can he have another go at passing Palou for that 5th position? Hansen still not managed to find a way through on Van Dorn. He was even closer this time through the previous split, and there you can see all over the back of him now is Hansen. But can Hansen find a way through? They've managed to drop Yamamoto, so unless Yamamoto's made a mistake there, is Pagenaud, 11th position, 0 points at the moment for the Frenchman, who currently sits 2nd in the championship. But here we go, down the start-finish straight. Here's Alex Palou under pressure once again. Hansen sets the fastest lap in an attempt to try and pass Van Dorn as they're side by side, coming into the braking zone for turn 1, and through goes Hansen into the lead. But Van Dorn tries to fight back. Hansen still with the better line, goes through, hangs on to that 1st place, and this is potentially, or most certainly, if he can get away, going to be a win here for Hansen. And this is going to be doing his championship a world of good as he currently sits 3rd in the standings. But can Van Dorn respond? He's still staying close enough. Although Hansen pulling out a car length here and there through these tight and twisty S's. Yamamoto can only sit there and watch at the moment. When they come across the line, it will be the final lap. So, down the start-finish straight they come. Is Van Dorn close enough for a move on Hansen? As they come across the start-finish straight, Hansen, another fastest lap of the race, 6 tenths the advantage over Van Dorn. This has got to be his race today. Van Dorn not close enough to make a move into the braking zone. But someone to talk about, as there's a big gaggle going on in the background. Dixon, who's already been passed there by Charles Weerts, is coming back at Weerts into turn 1. And is he going to take 7th position? Yes, he does. That's allowed Collado a little bit of breathing space, but Dixon's still already on the back end of Collado. Palou has managed to scamper off up the road into 5th. But here's Van Dorn trying as hard as he can to try and put Hansen under any pressure. And Palou struggling a little bit there, as you can see, through the S's, but not enough. Here comes Hansen around the final corner of Berrotada, and he looks to have done the job as he comes out and exits to take the checkered flag. Hansen wins from Stoffel Van Dorn, Yamamoto in 3rd, and Ella Lloyd comes across the line to finish in 4th. We wait to see Alex Palou hangs on to that 5th position ahead of James Collado, and that looks like Dixon was having an issue across the line there. Wirtz had managed to come back through on Dixon, and Juncadella was pretty much alongside, so I wonder if there was an issue there for Dixon. So we wait for the rest of the field. Kobayashi coming through in 16th. Obviously he's got the disqualification over his head. And Paul di Resta will be the last driver across the line. Tough weekend for Team Scotland, but luckily for them, Team Thailand are struggling as well, but they need to be capitalising on these situations. So across the line to finish, confirmation that Philip Hansen wins here in the Division 1 sprint race ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn, Yamamoto in 3rd, and Ella Lloyd finishes in 4th. Alex Palou was 5th ahead of James Collado in 6th. Charles Wirtz came across the line in 7th ahead of Scott Dixon and Daniel Juncadella in 9th. Nick Heidfeld takes the final points in 10th, with Simon Pagenaud 11th, Newgarden in 12th, and Kirkwood in 13th. Further on down the order, Elvin Evans finished 14th ahead of Lee Watanabe in 15th, Alex Dunn in 16th, and Paul di Resta being the last classified finisher. Robin Freins retired with a transmission failure, Sebastian Bourdais also with a transmission failure, Shane van Gisbergen was crashed out by Kobayashi, and Nick de Vries also crashes with Rennie Ras, again another accident. Sandy Stubik had the suspension failure, with Max Hart involved in that incident at the start by Jack Aitken. Jack Aitken was disqualified as a result of that, and as we said earlier, Kamui Kobayashi disqualified for taking out Shane van Gisbergen. So yet again another attritional sprint race, only 17 cars classified. What can the feature races have in store for us? Well, someone who's going to tell you is Chris, and I hand it over to him again.
That was quite chaotic indeed. A lot of drama, a lot of drivers with misfortune, in particular René Rast and Shane van Gisbergen. And there's also drivers that have had some great performances. Ella Lloyd, for example, P4, pretty good going. And if that's the pace that they've got now, what pace have they got for the feature? Well, we'll find out in a bit. But now we must turn to the feature for the Division 2. We can see the grid for the feature race now. And one of the big title contenders, Felix Rosenqvist, on pole, with Kevin Magnussen as well in the hunt right beside him. Arthur Leclerc in the mix in 3rd place, went for a pretty good setup there, and Christian Lundgaard in P4, with Marcus Ericsson, a good qualifying finally you could say, in P5, Nico Verone for Argentina, very good qualifying in P6, Stefan Rakelmi in P7, Robert Wickens in 8th, Rafael Marcello in 9th, Jimmy Wingcup in 10th, and then we have Roman Dangerous in 11th, Will Power in 12th, with Antonio Felix Acosta in 13th. Sebastian Buemi will want to climb the table so he can get some big championship points to keep himself in it. Felipe Albuquerque in 15th, with Sasha Fenestrat in 16th, Felipe Nasser for Brazil in 17th, Paddle Award will definitely want to climb up the order from P18. Felipe Drugovic in 19th, Sheldon van der Linden in 20th, Rafael Villagomez in 21st, Fuoco in 22nd, van der Linde in 23rd, Antonio Giovinazzi for Italy 24th, and in the two Indian cars in 25th and 26th, Mahavir Radhagodinathan and Ren Karthikeyan. And for the Division 2 feature race, it is back to Ryan Ferris.
Division 2 feature race time, and it is championship leader Felix Rosenqvist on pole from Kevin Magnussen in second. And when the lights come on, we'll see who's going to get the good run down to turn 1. And it's away. Good start there from Rosenqvist. Ericsson having a good one as well in the background. But around the outside, that looks like one of the... it is Leclerc. So Leclerc's coming around into second position. Is he going to try and take the lead as Ericsson comes down the inside now and takes the lead from Rosenqvist? Leclerc slots into third position. Wickens fourth and Verone in fifth. Buemi's made a stormer of a start. Starting 14th, he's up to 6th. And he's challenging Verone for that 5th position, but I don't think he's going to get through there. So around into the S's for the first time as we ride on board. But there is Marcus Ericsson, who's got a brilliant getaway there and has taken the lead into turn 1. And you can see in the background Leclerc all over the back end of Rosenqvist. And that's Rafael Villagomez, and that's collision there with one of the Team India cars. So Villagomez, he's already had an incident somewhere as he's got part of his front wing missing and his rear wing missing. Now, and he just gets a bit of a helping hand there from Raghunathan. Actually, no, so that was Karthikeyan. And out of the race goes the Mexican in his home race. And I'm pretty sure we will potentially see some form of penalty there. As Leclerc's coming alongside Rosenqvist, he's in the slipstream, he's had to go back in again, but he's going to try and dive down the inside into turn 1. Can he get the job done? They're still side by side coming into turn 1, and that is job done there for Leclerc, but Rosenqvist unable to come back at him. Wickens isn't too far behind, but Wellings managed to go up in front of Verone for 5th position. So Rosenqvist not with... it started on pole, but he seems to be going backwards at the moment, potentially running a heavier fuel load. And that's a lock up there for Power down in 13th position. Australia in that top 3 at the moment for the constructors and on course for promotion, but they need to continue to have good results if they want to keep the likes of Sweden at bay. But here's Rosenqvist on board as they come through the peloton. Here's Roman De Angelis trying to have a go down the inside there of Felipe Albuquerque, but it doesn't quite work there, and that's going to put him on the back foot as they come down the start-finish straight one more time. Rosenqvist just about holding on ahead of Wickens. Further on back, this is Raquelme. There's 3 abreast there, actually. That's Raquelme. I think both Danish cars are there. There's Magnussen. And Magnussen has not had the best of starts either. Front row to 10th position at the moment. So, as they come along, we're starting to see another slipstream train appear in the midfield, much like we were seeing in the sprint races. Rosenqvist being reminded of how challenging this circuit has been. He was very lucky to get away with no damage or anything from his off-track excursion he had in the sprint race. At the moment, this is Felipe Albuquerque, who's causing a bit of a train there, but Raquelme tries to go through, still unable to get through. That's going to put him under pressure now from Magnussen. Giovinazzi getting it all wrong through the Pirotada. And again, they're pretty much lining 3 abreast down the start-finish straight. And once they've finished shuffling around into turn 1, there you go, 3 abreast there. Lundgaard on his teammate, and that's off. That's Raquelme off. So Raquelme, it looks as though, was it a lock-up or was he helped? That was definitely a lock-up there for the Monegasque driver, and he's lost his front wing as a result of it. Now he's going to have to gradually limp his way back to pit lane. There's O'Ward trying to find his way up through the field, started 18th. O'Ward, who, well, at one point led the championship and is still in championship contention, but life has been made a little bit harder. So Albuquerque once again under pressure, but this time it's from De Angelis, and he gets through this time. So we finally see a move there into Piratada, and now Da Costa making a move on Albuquerque as well. Further on up, that looks like Buemi and Varun jostling for position. But out in the lead, Marcus Ericsson from Leclerc, Rosenqvist in third position, and has over a second to Wickens. Wickens, who looked as though he was closing on Rosenqvist, has backed off a little. Back to Leclerc in second position. As he comes around the Piratada one more time to complete 5 of the 36 laps. Ericsson, with a new fastest lap of the race, extends his advantage to 2.3 seconds. Leclerc, a reasonably comfortable distance ahead of Rosenqvist, and here is Magnussen fighting with Albuquerque for that 10th place. So he's done the switchback, he's going to go down the inside on Albuquerque, and that's 10th position there for Magnussen. Da Costa, the next car ahead of him. And that's Albuquerque off. So Albuquerque, who had just been passed by Magnussen for that 10th position. Now it doesn't look as though anyone's close enough to push him, so he's done it all by himself. A lock up there into the barriers, and that is game over there for the Portuguese driver. Still, we look to Leclerc, who's pretty much keeping the gap between himself and Ericsson fairly stable there at 2.3 seconds. Here's Magnussen trying to find a way through on Da Costa this time down the inside. Has he managed to make the move stick? Buemi sets the fastest lap as it stands, but Magnussen unable to get through. Will he have a chance into turn 1? He has, as a result of that failed manoeuvre, put himself a little bit further back. Buemi's gone through on Wickens. Now, Buemi is Rosenqvist's closest challenger in the championship. 17 points separate the pair. But can Buemi, with what Buemi believes isn't the most ideal setup choice for this circuit, but he still seems to be making it work, unlike his teammate Marcello, who's managed to bring his way back up into 13th position, but has fallen from P8, I believe he started in. Ericsson still chipping away, but Staying fairly constant there as Magnussen again tries to go through on Da Costa, but fails to do so, and that's allowed Power onto the back of him, and with Power comes Lundgaard. So going 3 abreast down the start-finish straight. Now, who has managed to do what as they finish shuffling the deck? And it is Da Costa still in that 9th position, but Power has managed to go ahead of Magnussen and Lundgaard. Marcello shuffled up into 12th, and they continue. But there's yellow flags, and it's Verone who's gone off. So Nico Verone again on his own, and it's a lock up into the barriers. But luckily, very much like Rosenqvist earlier in the sprint race, no damage to the car. But he's going to have to sit there a long time as the pack are fairly close to each other. Oh, and someone else is off. That's is that Felipe Nasr that's gone off? It's one of the Brazilian cars. It is indeed Felipe Nasr who's gone off. And the rest of the field managing to come through and hopefully avoid, and that's very close there. But it's ended up, he's stalled the car and is unable to get going. So what was looking like a very good performance there for Verone has come to nothing. But here's Lundgaard down the inside, attempting to move on Power, but unable to get through at the Perotada. But he's still close enough that he's going to get a good drive out of the final corner into the slipstream. So here's Rosenqvist. You can see behind Sebastian Buemi as he tries to close the gap on the championship leader for 3rd position. And here's further back Marcello trying a move there on Will Power, but he's not going to get through there on the Australian driver. Here's Leclerc in a fairly comfortable 2nd position at the moment. The gap every lap or so is extending by 1/10 of a second between Ericsson and Leclerc. And Ericsson now sets the fastest lap of the race. So this top 5 here trading fastest laps. So lap 17, it will seem as Marcello pulls out the slipstream and goes down the inside of Will Power, and that is 10th position there for the Swiss driver. And on board there, and there's Karthikeyan making a move. That's something we don't see too often. So a position gained there for the Indian driver. And here's Fenestraz trying to go through back on Karthikeyan, but Karthikeyan fights back on that one. So it looks as though Buemi is going to go short into this first stint in the hope of undercutting Rosenqvist and taking track position, but there's Rosenqvist going off! Rosenqvist coming under pressure there from Buemi, and he's cracked going into turn 1. He's lost his front wing as well, and into the barriers he goes. He's going to have to sit there for quite some time as the rest of the field comes through. Dramatic stuff here as it is coming down to crunch time in this championship. Only 1 round remains after this one, and what has been a 17-point advantage to Buemi, providing Buemi still stays where he is going to be fairly rapidly diminished. Now, can Rosenqvist keep the car going? Or will he stall very much like Verone earlier? He's been sat there a long time. You can still see cars in the background streaming through. And at the moment, he is reversing, so he's managed to keep the car going. He's in 20th position, but he's going to have to slowly trundle back to pit lane. He's got pretty much the entire lap to do. And the leaders are already coming around to finish this one, so he's almost a lap behind. In fact, he will go a lap behind at this rate. And there's again a move there attempted on Carthagena, but Carthagena's still holding on. But Ericsson still comfortable with a 2.5 second advantage. De Angelis now creeps in with the fastest lap as Dragovic struggling with a bit of understeer through the S's. Here's Leclerc, who's actually closed, I think, a little bit on Ericsson. It's 2.5 seconds still. And Buemi holding on to that third position. He's been told by the team, or he's saying, let's capitalise. Buemi just really needs to stay put where he is, not push too hard, as the gap between himself and Leclerc is pretty big. And that's Nasser off. So Nasser off into the barriers. Has he damaged the car at all, or has he managed to bounce back onto the track okay? It seems as though both Brazilian cars struggling in these with his current car and layout, and no, he's out. He's managed to stall it. So another car gone. But here is Leclerc, and you can see behind there, I was like a bit confused for a moment then, but as I said, Rosenqvist has been lapped. Now, will he at all intervene and get involved with the cars ahead? Obviously, he's on fresher tyres, but a heavier fuel load, but this is Will Power, and he's going to try and send a move on O'Ward, and indeed takes 11th position away from O'Ward. O'Ward, who would dearly want to be capitalising on Rosenqvist's demise in this race, but he's still struggling. He is in the points, the top 15 score in a feature race, but he would very much want to be a lot higher up in the order. Here's the recovering Riquelme, who's putting a move there on Carthagena, I think that is. Indeed, it is Carthagena. So Fenestraz has managed to get through on Carthagena. Ericsson sets another fastest lap of the race. And continues on. Leclerc holding on fairly well. Here's Marcello up into 9th position, but he's got, I think that's Magnussen, very much in his slipstream. He's going to try and send it down the inside. We cut back to the front of Ericsson. Negotiates the S's, and he has put in a fair amount of time on Leclerc now. 4 tenths he's increased in the last lap or so over Leclerc. So we saw the fastest lap posted by Ericsson, but I feel he's not that much quicker than Leclerc, so there must have been a mistake as well on Leclerc's part that has compounded this situation. But as I expected to see Rosenqvist getting involved with these guys, he doesn't appear to be having the pace on these new tyres that we would expect to see. But Rosenqvist still is going to try and see if he can salvage anything from this race, as Lundgaard tries through on Da Costa, doesn't get through. Buemi's pitted, so importantly for Buemi, where is he going to feed out in comparison to the rest of the field who have yet to stop? Magnussen now sets the fastest lap of the race. down in 8th position. Buemi's come out behind O'Ward. So we're expecting to see Ericsson in at roughly lap 17. It's currently, and it's been 14 laps completed so far. But I feel there's not going to be enough of a pace advantage. But we can see here, someone who definitely does have a pace advantage is Roman De Angelis over his teammate Wickens. So De Angelis, who's really, well, I was about to big him up there, but he's now pulled into pit lane, but he's really started to shine a bit in this championship. And people from other championships, like the Grand Prix World Series, would definitely be taking note of his performances in the Nations Cup. So Ericsson with a 3-second advantage now to Leclerc. So Leclerc must be struggling now with his tyres. But he's not quite falling into the clutches of Wickens behind, although I'm surprised. Albeit he's a bit further behind. This is a move here from Drugovic. Up into 14th position ahead of Sheldon van der Linde, and Leclerc will be pitting this lap, so will he manage to get any form of undercut, and where will he come out in comparison to Buemi? Buemi's still behind O'Ward, although it has updated now and he is some 6 or 7 seconds behind O'Ward, so it could be a nice little gap for Leclerc to come out into between O'Ward and Buemi. Magnussen has also pitted. Here comes De Angelis on fresh rubber, and that's very close there against Calvin van der Linde, but I'm pretty sure he's going to get him this time. So Leclerc has actually come out ahead of O'Ward, as you can see there. And the engine's gone for Rosenqvist, so any chance of a comeback is well and truly gone for the Swedish driver. And this is going to be big for the championship. So out goes Rosenqvist, and there's a real traffic jam appearing now at the Hochweiler corner. Here's Leclerc, who's been passed now by O'Ward. So that is not going to impress the Monegasque driver, although he has got quite a considerable advantage over Buemi. But it's not going to help in any chance of him getting an undercut against Ericsson. Ericsson is now pitted. That allows Wickens to inherit the lead ahead of Whincup and Da Costa. Leclerc well into the slipstream now, and Ericsson's just a little bit further up the road, so not worked out for Leclerc there, but there's a lot of traffic to deal with for both drivers. And Leclerc's not gone through on O'Ward. I thought it would be job done considering he's on fresh tyres, although he will be on a heavier fuel load. Which can have some effect on the car's general performance on the start-finish straight. Now Magnussen, who's come out on fresh tyres. Leclerc still unable to find a way through on O'Ward, and he's actually costing himself time now, and that's allowing Buemi to gradually close. albeit there is quite a considerable gap between them. So Da Costa pits from 3rd position. That allows Ericsson to move up into 3rd position, and a lot of the drivers now in pit lane. Wickens, however, is still stayed out. Is De Angelis still unable to find a way through on Calvin van der Linde. Van der Linde goes on the defensive there, and this is cost the Canadian quite a lot of time there. You can just see up ahead is Buemi. Power has pitted and he's coming all the way down the order. May even slip just outside the top 15, but he's just holding on to 15th position there. De Angelis, another attempt on Calvin van der Linde, and that's still not worked out. There is potentially the net race leader, that is Marcus Ericsson. He's stuck behind one of the Team India cars as Robert Wickens pits from the lead, and Whincup now goes into the lead. Ericsson will gain another position, but still he's not looking like he's going to pass, as that's Giovinazzi going off and into the barriers. He's managed to keep it going though, and reverses back onto the track. Although he's now stuck there, so obviously off camera there must be cars coming through, but he's fallen backwards now and is at risk of going a lap down. Kelvin van der Linde has pitted, so that will release De Angelis to, well, he'll be somewhat happy with that now, and he can now chase after Buemi, who's a little bit further up the road than he would have wanted to. Now this is Riquelme, I think, coming through on Fenestraz. Does he get the move done? No, Fenestraz still holds on to that 18th position ahead of Riquelme. Here's Leclerc in 3rd position. We're still waiting on Whincup to come to pit lane, but he carries on. So there we go, that's the 4th position. Here's Ericsson still trying to find a way past, and does finally find a way past the Team India car, and you can see Leclerc has closed quite considerably now. Further back, this is Raghunathan, who's had to cut across there, and I think Whincup was meant to pit as well. So Raghunathan has gone off, lost his front wing. Now, if that was Whincup indeed, who's... Actually, I think that was Will Power there, as he's managed to make it to the end of the pit straight. Power, who is ahead of Magnussen at the moment. Here's Leclerc trying to find a way past Karthikeyan. Giovinazzi still struggling. He's not had the best of weekends. And Whincup does indeed manage to make it back to pit lane. So I believe that was Will Power that was involved in that little pit entry incident. But where Leclerc was probably rubbing his hands earlier as he had closed in on Ericsson, he's pretty much lost that time now, as he's still unable to get past the Team India car. Here's O'Ward trying to make a move there, and the same thing has happened again. Sheldon van der Linde was trying to find a way through. And once again, Will Power almost involved. And van der Linde out of the race. So another retirement. Power still hanging on ahead of Lundgaard in that 8th position. And that's Whincup with an off there. He spins from 5th position. Luckily, there's no one in shot. Although, by having that prolonged spin, that's now meant he's going to have to sit there. As you can see, once again, very much like Rosenquist earlier, as the field stream on through. This is not going to help them in their fight with Sweden for that top 3 place and promotion. But he finally comes back on. Here's Buemi, and in front of him, I believe that is Giovinazzi, who's going to be lapped by the Swedish. And there's Floko going off at the same place as Giovinazzi, spins the exact same manner. But luckily for him, he's managed to rejoin fairly quickly. But not a good day at the office. But as a result of that, there are 2 fairly slow cars now ahead of Ericsson to hold him up. So this is going to help Leclerc. And that's Marcello going off. So Marcello spins off, has a good recovery, but as a result, he's lost his front wing now. And that is not going to help Switzerland whatsoever. But they are fairly comfortable in the points table at the top of the championship. But here's Buemi, and he's got Robert Wickens for company. So Buemi coming under pressure now in these closing stages of this race. He's got Giovinazzi in front of him, who's been struggling all race. And the team very much willing Wickens on for this P3. Leclerc still losing time, and Whincup's off again. Marcello has managed to make it back to pit lane, but this has definitely not helped Team Australia, who once again losing out on points. They got power in 9th position. And it seems as though Whincup is unable to get it out the barriers. He may have to retire here. He's still trying to get the car going, and I think by the looks of things, that was once again just before the S's. This is Da Costa, who's in 6th position. O'Ward, who's under pressure from Lundgaard now. Has had a fairly good recovery here. Here's Giovinazzi, who's trying to come back past actually on Wickens. And Wickens will not be happy with that. He's going to have to try and fight back as Wickens, but Wickens, who was looking to fight for this 3rd position, is now being harassed by the Italian, who is being lapped, and in doing so has allowed De Angelis onto the back end of Wickens, who's going to be furious as he goes past. If he goes past, and he does get through on Giovinazzi, that's cost him a lot of time against Buemi. Ericsson still comfortably in the lead. 5.2 seconds is the gap between himself and Leclerc. And Leclerc has around 11 seconds to Buemi behind. Now the team willing Buemi on. He's got the 2 Canadians behind him. Luckily for him, he managed to get himself ahead of Giovinazzi, and comfortably ahead of Giovinazzi, so he couldn't be repassed. That's giving him a bit of breathing space. Here's Magnussen trying to go through at the Perotada, and that's cost him dearly there. But luckily he's managed to scoop the car back up, and he's still on the track, unlike other drivers this weekend. But there's Will Power, who's on a bit of a recovery drive himself, and he has O'Ward just in front of him, who's weaving frantically there. You want to be careful about that. He may find himself under investigation from the stewards for weaving a bit too much there. Power, and I think O'Ward must have an issue because obviously he was fighting with Lundgaard, and Lundgaard's now gone through, Power's now gone through. He's still holding on to that 9th position. Here's Leclerc. De Angelis now, and he's trying to pull a move, and O'Ward's gone off track. So there must be an issue here for O'Ward. He's saying the car feels weird and he's lost positions to Lundgaard, Power and Magnussen all in the space of a lap. And on a day where he really needs to capitalise, when championship leader Rosenqvist is out of this race, O'Ward seems to be throwing it all away. Maybe it's hometown pressure for the Mexican here in Mexico City. So here is Karthikeyan being lapped by Buemi. You saw briefly there Ericsson trying to get round, I think that was either, wouldn't have been Giovinazzi, it would have most likely been Fuoco. And that has allowed Leclerc to close. It was a 5.2 second gap. As they come across the start-finish straight, what is it going to be? So the gap is now 3.7 seconds. And there's still more cars to deal with. And I think actually Giovinazzi's managed to find his way back through. Ragunathan's having a lock-up into turn 1. He's lost his front wing. Is he going to get in the way of Leclerc? Yes, he is. Riquelme's out of the race now. And that looks as though, is that a suspension failure or just a lock-up? And he goes into the barriers hard there for the Monegasque driver. And now there are 4 cars all lined up there. They're going to run out, well, they pretty much have run out of space there. But here is Ericsson, who is stuck behind what I think is Fuoco. This is going to allow Leclerc to catch. So we have less than 10 laps to go, and Ericsson tries to go around the outside, but he hasn't managed to find a way through. This is going to cost him dearly now, and he's actually lost. He's fallen off the back end of Fuoco. And there's Leclerc, he's closing even more. It's now 2.1 seconds, the gap. Down at the start-finish straight. 2.1 seconds between Ericsson and Leclerc. Ericsson still unable to find a way past that Italian car in front of him. And I think he's going to catch him in the exact same place that he did before. So there's Fuoco, P15, and that is the final point scoring position. But, well, Ericsson tries to go through, but Fuoco is not really going to let him through that easy. And this is costing Ericsson a lot of time. You can see there, Leclerc very close. Now, Leclerc's just got to be patient. He can't do the same, and he is going to try and do the same as Ericsson, and that's not going to work, and that's going to cost him time. So, a little bit more breath of fresh air there for Ericsson, as he's now going to extend his advantage over Leclerc. It had come below 2 seconds. It is now 1.9 seconds, so it still stays that way, but Leclerc not having the pace against Giovinazzi, Fuoco, and another car going into pit lane, and I think that's the wall that is been hit there for Wickens, so Wickens got an electrical failure. And Giovinazzi spins again. Absolute chaos here in Mexico City. We thought Brazil was chaotic, but this is proven to be even more chaotic. And we still have the Division 1 feature race remaining in this weekend. Leclerc has managed to find a way through on Fuoco. He's lost time again, 3.3 seconds between Ericsson and Leclerc. And Karthikeyan having a bit of an off-track excursion. So Will Power's going to go through as he is being lapped. Lundgaard. It's Magnussen behind. Ward has managed to regroup. He's still there in 9th position. So Lundgaard on the tail of Da Costa for 5th position. He's going to try and go for a move down the inside at the Parotado, and that hasn't worked for him, and he's lost a bit of momentum there. He's not going to be close enough, I don't think, for a move into turn 1. But still, he's going to soldier on and carry on to fight with 6 laps remaining. Here's Buemi. He has De Angelis bearing down on him. Here's the 2 Team India cars fighting for position, and there are points potentially a little bit further on if people continue to fall off the track. But it is a tall order for the 2 Indians. So Ward in 9th position. He's going to gain some points back on Rosenquist as we come into the final weekend of what has been a very dramatic season. But here we go. Ericsson continuing to extend over Leclerc. Buemi quite some distance behind and coming under pressure, as I said, from De Angelis for this 3rd position. So here we go, says De Angelis. He's been gradually hunting down the Swiss driver. Further on back, here's Lundgaard, and in the background, Da Costa. Lundgaard's gone through on Da Costa, and Da Costa, in trying to keep up with Lundgaard, almost off the circuit there. Ward has gone through on Magnussen for P8. But here is De Angelis, still stalking his prey for that 3rd position. Now, the main advantage here for Buemi is that the Team Switzerland car has gone for a more top speed orientated setup, so that may help him as we come on to the start-finish straight. De Angelis is still close enough, but has he got the pace? He's definitely got the pace to try and go for a move into turn 1. He's gone down the outside. He's now going to dive down the inside for the position. And goes through. Does he? Yes, he does. Buemi tries to fight back, but that is position there for De Angelis. Buemi, who fought as hard as he could, but unable to capitalise or hold off the fast-charging Canadian. De Angelis, who's been putting on some brilliant performances in these last few races, and he's on for another podium for Team Canada. Back towards the front, and 2nd place Leclerc, still falling off the back end of Ericsson, who has been dominant this weekend. And there's Da Costa going off. So Da Costa, after losing out to Lundgaard, spins, and that's potentially almost another position there for Ward. Powers managed to get through into 6th position. And still 3 laps remain. Can Ward sneak another position? Another couple of points to keep his championship chances realistically alive into the final round of the season. There's De Angelis, there's Magnussen trying to find a way through on O'Ward. And Carthagena with an engine blowout there, so Carthagena will not... He wasn't in the points anyway, but he would definitely not be scoring any points today now. And the Indian driver, who's proven to be more of a roadblock this weekend, is out of the way and destroys his front wing in the process. So out of the race is Carthagena. Ragunathan still remains in this race. As the car is craned off the circuit. Fuoco now comes through still in 15th position and on for a point. But here's Ericsson, and hopefully for him, he's not going to catch the cars ahead, and that's Magnussen side by side there with O'Ward. I think there may have even been contact there into the Perotada. And O'Ward, who looked as though he was possibly going to find a way through on Da Costa ahead, has fallen off the back of him. Da Costa's trying to find a way through on Power. 2 laps remain. As we say, still on for some solid points as they go over to Barber International over in America for the final race of the season. A very tricky undulating circuit as O'Ward has a lockup but just about holds on. It's coming under increasing pressure now from Magnussen behind. But the leaders are now on to the final lap. It all looks fairly safe for the top 5. Unless they make any mistakes on this final lap, it's going to pretty much stay as it is for the top 5, but it's not going to stay the same potentially further on back. And that's another attempt there by Magnussen into the Perotada, but this time he's a lot closer to O'Ward. Can he snatch this position off of O'Ward in the dying embers of this race? As the same time actually as lapping ahead. I thought that was almost a move for position for Da Costa, but no, he's just finding a way through on the back marker Italian car. But here's Ericsson. He comes round the Perotada one final time, and he has been truly dominant in a season where he's struggled against his teammate. He's set the record straight today and wins here in Mexico ahead of Leclerc. And De Angelis comes round. There's Fuoco, he's going to pick up a point there, but here comes De Angelis. 3rd position there, ahead of Buemi. Buemi still on for some very strong points there. Lundgaard across the line in 5th position. We wait for Will Power, who's a lot further behind, a lot of squabbling going on in the background, and O'Ward still under pressure there from Magnussen, but Magnussen unable to get through. O'Ward will certainly hold on to this position. 8th place. He's managed to make up 10 places in this race, albeit some of them inherited through other people's demise, but still, you've got to stay on the track where others haven't. Wickens comes across the line, obviously disappointed. Opportunity was there for a podium, but an electrical issue caused him to fall down the order. Marcello, similar incident with spinning off and destroying the front wing, but here's confirmation. Marcus Ericsson wins ahead of Arthur Leclerc, and Roman De Angelis in 3rd. Sebastian Buemi finished in 4th with Lundgaard in 5th. Will Power come through into 6th position, and Da Costa in 7th. Pato O'Ward, another standout performance there from 18th to 8th, ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Felipe Drugovich was 10th. Robert Wickens 11th. Calvin van der Linde was 12th, and Sasha Fenestraz was 13th. Moving further on down the order, Raffaele Marcello finished 14th, and Antonio Fuoco finishing 15th ahead of Giovinazzi. Ragunathan 17th, and a lap down with Whincup also a lap down in 18th, and we go on to the many retirements. We'll start with Stefan Rakelmi with an accident, Van der Linde also with an accident, the engine failure from Rosenqvist, Felipe Nasr also going off with an accident, Nico Varone crashing. We also had Felipe Albuquerque and Villagomez crashing, and Karthikeyan was disqualified, although he did have the engine blowout, but a disqualification as a result of taking out Varone in the earlier part of the race. Actually, no, Villagomez, I think it was. Anyway, very chaotic and very pivotal for the championship. I will hand you back over to Chris.
Well, just like the sprints have been, more chaos, more drama, but what a great drive from Marcus Ericsson, who, while his teammate in a championship fight ended up messing up and then having a retirement, Ericsson was there to pick up the pieces and get a victory. Tough break for Arthur Leclerc. He's been second place so many times. The manager there must be really peeved of that one. But the title fight is now oh so close because of that. What was a 14-point gap from Rosenqvist to Buemi is now only 7 points. He's gaining in. And then Paddle Ward is 19 behind, and then Kevin Magnussen on 190. And after that event, it's only the top 4 that are now eligible to be the champion, so anyone from lower is now out of the championship. Arthur Leclerc being one of them on 64 behind on 158. Will Power on 153. Jamie Whincup 152. And it's been very good equal efforts between those two across the season. Raffaele Marcello 150. Antonio Felix Acosta 139. Christian Lundgaard 131. Felipe Albuquerque on 127. Robert Wickens and De Angelis, both Canadians, on 126 and 113. Then on to Antonio Giovinazzi of Italy on 96 points. Marcus Ericsson with that victory puts him up to 93 points. Felipe Nasr on 85 with Stefan Rakelmi at 83. Fuoco on 73. Kelvin van der Linde now on 47. Fenestras a couple of points now on 45. Rafael Villagomez with 43. Nico Varone 38. Leonardo Fornaroli at 36. Rafael Camara 34. Sean van der Linde also on 34 after all that. And then James Hinchcliffe on 18. And then Felipe Drogovic on 17. Maheva Raghunathan remains on 10 points, much like his teammate on 0. But let's see what the nation standings looks like. Switzerland's gap is 44 points, so a bit of a buffer for them to Denmark. And then Sweden is now in third, 50 points behind, but only 10 ahead of Australia. So it's oh so close getting for that final promotion spot. Nail-biting stuff. And then Portugal 5th with 266, Canada 257, Mexico 246, Monaco after a decent showing here 241, Italy 205, Brazil 145, Argentina 85, South Africa 81, and India with 10. Well, after all that chaos in the Division 2 feature, can Division 1 feature bring the same? I dread to think it might do. And let's have a look at the grid for that. René Rast, after his retirement in the sprint, would like to fix things as he now starts on pole in Mexico City. And then Stoffel Van Dorn on a great charge still in second place. Kamui Kobayashi in third, with Shane Van Gisbergen in fourth, Charles Wirtz in fifth, Philip Hansen, one of the title contenders, in sixth, Scott Dixon in seventh, Ella Lloyd with a great qualifying in eighth. What can she do? Naoki Yamamoto in ninth, Alex Palou in 10th. Nick de Vries starts in 11th with Nick Heidhold alongside him in 12th. Daniel Jongadere in 13th. Alvin Evans in 14th. If he's got a quick car, can he move up the field? Joseph Newgarden in 15th. Robin Bryans in 16th. Simon Pagenaud in 17th. And Sebastian Bourdais in 18th. Let's see what France can try and muster from all this. Paul di Resta in 19th. James Gallardo in 20th. Sandy Stuvik in 21st. Carl Kirkwood in 22nd. And the two Island cars of Alex Dunn and Max Hart. And then Jack Aitken in 25th. And then Natanid Lee Watanabe. And now for the final race of the day here in Mexico City. Ryan Ferris, it is over to you.
The final race of the day, it is the Division 1 feature, and it's René Rast on pole from Stoffel Van Dorn in second position. Again, Rast, one of the main championship contenders, but Van Dorn's also been bringing his way into it, and we're away. Good start there from Van Dorn. He takes the lead off of Rast. Van Gisbergen in the background coming and jostling for position. He's going to try and dive down the inside as they approach turn 1. Rast slotting in from behind Van Dorn, but here comes Van Gisbergen up into second. And that's Jongadere off. And who's that? That's one of the Japanese drivers. I think that's Yamamoto. So a wheel missing there. I can't quite see who that is behind, who's been caught up in that incident. It was contact. So Newgarden went into the back of De Vries, and by the looks of things, so De Vries has gone into the back of Juncadella. Now, if indeed, so that's and it is Yamamoto. So, championship leader Yamamoto caught up in the incident, but I guess you could say, luckily for him, he's not too far off the back of the pack, and there's still plenty of time to make up some positions. Van Dorn leads, Van Gisbergen up into second position, Rast is in third. Kamui Kobayashi is in fourth position, and that's all very important for the Constructors' Championship. So come through the S's for the first time. But there's Rast, he's looking to line a move up on Van Gisbergen. He's going to retake that position. Is he into the Perotana? He's not quite close enough, but is he going to try and get a good run out of the final corner, down the start-finish straight? And it looks as though he's doing so. He's pulling out already. As they come down to the first S's. He's having to take another dig at it, and here he comes, Rast down the inside of Van Gisbergen, and that is definitely second place now. Van Gisbergen tried to retake that position, but there's Bourdais going off. So Bourdais is off, and he rejoins fairly unsafely there, I'd say. And De Vries is off as well, and that's a wheel missing for him. So what has happened here? He's lost his rear wing, and it's Bourdais. So Bourdais got it completely wrong. Locks up into the side of De Vries, who is no issue there, and has come back on no front or rear wing. And as he tries to rejoin, locks up into the barriers, and that is a wheel missing. So it'd be interesting to see how the stewards see this incident, because essentially, although Bourdais did cause contact, usually that would be a 30-second penalty, but whether or not they see the fact that De Vries did later go out as a result of his damage, whether he'll be disqualified. But we'll wait to see the confirmation. As De Vries' car is craned off. And it is indeed 30-second penalty there for Sebastian Bourdais. And I feel that is quite right, as Chalviers has a lock-up, and off he goes. Front wing, and he's hit, that's Dixon he's just gone into the side of. And Dixon has rejoined, he's just hit Bourdais, I think that is, or it may have even been Pagenaud. So absolute chaos and carnage, and we're not even at the end of the second lap. So Wirtz comes on to the road, and indeed that is Dixon rejoining rather unsafely. So that's a 10-second penalty for Charles Wirtz. Wirtz has to cut across. Oh, and he's missed pit entry. He's going to have to cut across, and that's a huge accident! I think he's collided with Aitken there, and he does, and the whole car's gone in half there. Charles Wirtz, who was trying to get the car back to pit lane and found himself in a very tough position trying to find his way onto the pit entry. It's a very tricky pit entry in that sort of situation, and with no front or rear wing has or I think it was just the front wing missing, has lost control of the car and has collided with Aitken. We see fines going down the order, and that's why he's gone off Into the barriers from 7th position. You see just up ahead, Rast battling for the lead with Van Dorn. So he's got back through on Van Gisbergen as we saw earlier. And this is a lock up there into the barriers. So not a good day for Team Leveland so far. See Dixon and everyone getting very, very close there. But Rast has managed to... Sorry, no. Further on up. The rest are further up in the field. That was Frines, sorry. He was rejoining the pack, but he's lost his front wing. And this has allowed Yamamoto, who's made up a few positions now. He's up to 20th. And it is indeed going to be a tough day, but he's still got opportunity. As you can see, Rast all over the back of Van Dorn. He's going to try and go through, and he does so. But Van Dorn tries to fight back, but Rast retakes the lead. The pole sitter, and also still within the fight for this championship. Hansen, 1 point off of the lead in this championship, and he will potentially take the lead of the championship. Frines has managed to make it back to pit lane. Hansen with Kobayashi all over the back of him. And further on back, Shane Van Gisbergen, who's been falling backwards really after taking that second position off of the start. Now Kobayashi trying to go down the inside of Hansen into the Pirotada. I don't think that's going to work, and indeed Hansen retakes that position. But Van Gisbergen in the tow, but Kobayashi is also behind Hansen. He comes out of the slipstream. Can Van Gisbergen do anything here? But it looks as though Kobayashi is going to go for the position down the inside, and third position for the Japanese driver. Van Gisbergen, who's had a bit of a regroup now. He looks as though he's going to have a go at passing Hansen. Here's Ella Lloyd on Nick Heidfeld. Lloyd with a 4th place in the sprint race. Brilliant performance. And can we see a repeat of that performance? We've only completed 4 laps so far, and we've already had a few retirements and plenty of carnage. I think some drivers will be enjoying the Mexico Grand Prix, but there'll be quite a few not looking forward to coming back here. But I hope everyone at home has definitely enjoyed what has been a very, very chaotic period here in the Cup, as we see Hansen coming back at Kobayashi down the start-finish straight. And he has taken that 3rd position. Further on back, Ella Lloyd on Heidfeld for 7th position. Here she comes down the inside into turn 1, and Van Gisbergen has a lock-up. Just about hangs on, but that's put him under pressure now from Alex Palou. Another championship contender here. He's going to try it and send it down the inside, but that's a bit too close for comfort there. Here's Stoffel Vandoorne. And that's an issue there for Hansen, is it? Sorry, for Rast. So, an issue for Rast, and he's lost that lead to Vandoorne. He's going to have to limp. Whatever's wrong, he's going to have to limp back to pit lane, but the others aren't catching him that quickly. And does he peel? Yes, he does indeed peel into pit lane. So we'll find out what is wrong if we didn't see that already. Meanwhile, here's Kobayashi fighting back on Hansen once again. And this is now the battle for 2nd. And Kobayashi goes down the inside of the Englishman. Now, can he set about going after Stoffel van Dorn, who has been incredibly strong ever since he stepped foot in that car? Obviously, he missed the first 3 rounds of the season, didn't take part, and he wasn't drafted in. Eventually, here's James Collado. And Yamamoto's got no gears, he's lost his gearbox. So, very important here for the championship. He will not be scoring any points today. And that crucial 1-point lead will be diminished at the moment as it stands. Hansen is in 3rd position, and that is his closest championship rival. As we look further back, this is Dixon fighting with Pagenaud. Obviously Dixon having that contact as he rejoined with Pagenaud earlier. And I feel Mac may not be particularly happy with that. Maybe some form of protest. And the team once again very happy with the pace and the setup that they've gone for here with the Team Wales, as we have both Lloyd in 6th and Evans in 8th position at the moment. Can we see them creep into the top 5? And as it stands at the moment, Lloyd is not too far behind Alex Palou for that 5th position. So here's Hansen, who's trying to keep onto the back of Kobayashi, but Kobayashi, and there's Pagenaud going wide again, and that's her front wing gone for Pagenaud. And he's collected one of the Irish drivers as well, and that's Hart. So he's going to have to make it back to pit lane, but he's going to cut across Hart, isn't he, to get into pit lane? Oh, that is very close there. And Pagenaud just about safely making it back to pit lane. Hart is actually in the points now, with Alex Dunn also in 11th, so they're going to score some points for Team Ireland. Here's Bourdais for a move down the inside of Stuvik, and manages to do so. René Rast making his way back through the field, 17th position at the moment, and obviously has the pace. Pole sitter, current fastest lap holder. But here is your current race leader of Stoffel van Dorn, who's gradually being closed in by Kobayashi. Now once again, as we saw in Division 2, with a lot of drivers falling off the road, as we see Ellen Lloyd sizing up a move into turn 1 against Alex Palou for a very important 5th position, but she's not quite close enough yet for Palou. It just seems as though the Spaniard got a much better exit out of the Pirotada. And both of them almost going a little bit wide there on exit of the first S's, but Lloyd is still going to have a look. Lee Watanagu under pressure now from René Rast, and that's going to be easy taken there from by the German. Van Dorn still coming under immense pressure from Kobayashi, who continues to close that gap bit by bit. Now, as I was about to say earlier, with all these drivers falling off the road and picking up damage, much like we saw in the Division 2 race, back markers will become a bit of an issue come the end of the race. So if Kobayashi can't get past now, there's a opportunity later on in this race. But again, it also comes down to pit strategy. Hansen still keeping a watching brief in the background. The gap between the top three is around about 2 seconds. You can see there 2.02. And Hansen as well is definitely closing on Van Dorn. So potential three-way scrap for this lead as the gap continues to come down. Here's René Rast and another potential overtake this time. It is on Jack Aitken, but he doesn't manage to get through this time. Scott Dixon with a lock-up there in 10th position, trying to catch up to Newgarden. So here's Elvin Evans. And Lloyd has got through on Palou, so whilst we weren't looking, she has managed to get through on Palou, 5th position. Elvin Evans is now closing in on the back of the Spanish driver, so another position potentially for Wales and some more crucial points. But still, Van Dorn half a second separates himself and Kobayashi. Hansen's managed to make a small inroad into them, but as it stands, Kobayashi still in mathematical contention for this championship, but barring any miracles, I can't see him being any form of threat to the championship. It's the top 8 really that are in the going, but Kobayashi's going to have another go for the lead. He's popped out of the slipstream. He's set the fastest lap of the race in doing so, but he's going to have to try. Is he going to dip back in, or is he going to go and do it on the brakes? He's going to do it on the brakes. So Van Dorn tried to fight it back, but Kobayashi, with a potentially lighter car than Van Dorn, takes the lead. Now he's going to have to go about extending his advantage if he is indeed going to pit early. We expect to see him roughly around lap 14, I believe, when we see the first people stop. And that's Heidfeld going off. Into the wall goes Heidfeld, but luckily for him it doesn't look to be any damage. And he's able to rejoin in 12th position, just ahead of Hart. But that's another position there for Alex Dunn, and that allows Collado up into the top 10. So Hansen now catching Van Dorn. Further on back, here's Elvin Evans. All over the back end of Alex Palou, so this is definitely going to be a move to come down the start-finish straight. He maybe pulled out a little too early there, but Evans is still tucked up in the slipstream. He's closing. So he come under the bridge, down into turn 1, and on the brakes comes Evans. And there we go. 6th position for the Welshman. Wales 5th and 6th. Rast has set the fastest lap of the race as he continues to make his way through the order. He's now in 14th position, now within the points. Rast currently sits 4th place in the championship. And there's Kirkwood off, so a spin there for Kirkwood. He's lost his front wing in the process as well. Although saying that, it doesn't look as though there is actually any damage there, so it might have been something else that I saw flicked up as he spin turned the car. As you can see, the leaders not too far away from the back markers now as we cross the line to complete 14 laps. No one has decided to pit yet. But next lap we will see Van Dorn in the pit box. So will we see Kobayashi as well, who has Van Dorn not quite got the pace, having fueled light for this first stint. Van Dorn 5th in the championship, and that's Jack Aitken-off. So Aitken-off, and that looked as though he was entering pit lane and has failed to make the pit entry. Here comes Pagenaud across the line. 3rd place in the championship. Currently sits 13 points off the lead, but that gap's going to increase at the moment. Hansen, as it stands, will be scoring 16 points, which will put him 15 points at the top at the moment. Van Dorn will be scoring 20. And that's Stuvik going off. And that is another front wing missing there. Alex Dunn has pitted from 11th position. Bourdais, for a moment there I thought that was Bourdais with a missing front wing. Here's Ella Lloyd in 5th position, trying to find a way through, and eventually does get through on Jack Aitken. So as I said, lap drivers starting to become a bit of a nuisance for the people at the front. Van Dorn now starting to come under pressure now from Hansen. We're expecting to see him in this lap. And so does the leader Kobayashi. So Kobayashi's in. So Kobayashi in, so is Van Dorn. By the looks of things, Hansen has stayed out. But as he continues to carry on, there's someone next in the pit lane. I think that's Stuvik, who's just had a new set of tyres and front wing. So hopefully for Hansen, although we'll be travelling a little bit heavy, and Hansen's gone off. Oh, just about held on to that. Scary stuff there for our new race leader. Doesn't want to be doing anything too silly, because as it stands at the moment, he will be taking that championship lead going into the final race at Barber. So there's Aitken having to get out of the way of Elvin Evans this time. Lloyd and Evans currently in 2nd and 3rd place as they have yet to stop. Pelot in 4th position. It's got one of the, I think that may have been Freins there just ahead as he is being lapped, but Hansen now getting a handy tow potentially from Stuvik just up ahead. Here's Aitken now being passed by Freins, and this is for position. All the while you have Pelot in 4th position who wants to lap these two. Further in the background, Dixon in 5th position. Back on board with Ella Lloyd, 4th place in the sprint race. Can she go any better today in the feature race? Here's Pelot eventually finding her way through on Jack Aitken, and that's Newgarden in the wall. So Joseph Newgarden off again. The corner that has caught many a driver out so far this weekend. We've had a train of cars all piled up in one of the earlier races. Wonder whether we will see something similar, but here is Van Dorn, who's come out ahead of Rast. Rast, who is going to most likely have to pit again as Rast tries to go down the inside of Van Dorn and always pushes Van Dorn off, but that is going to affect Van Dorn on time a bit there. But he's now back under pressure. Rast well and truly in the slipstream of Van Dorn. He's going to come past for position. So steaming down the inside comes René Rast, who is still just about in contention for this race, but he will most likely have to pit a little bit later on in the race. So Hansen continuing in the lead, and they will have to box at the end of this lap. And indeed, he does so as Elvin Evans goes off into the wall. Luckily for him, bounces pretty much straight onto the track, and no other cars around, so he can carry on. So lucky escape for the Welshman. Hansen in from the lead. Here's Alex Palou, who has continued on. Lloyd has pitted. So has Dixon. Palou takes the lead. Heidfeld has pitted, so Kobayashi is going to come back through. Will he come out? And he does so. He does come out ahead of Hansen. Although it is very, very close. And Hart's managed to come down and steam up the inside of Hansen. And look who's just behind. René Rast back in the frame once again. Behind Hansen. Is he going to try and make a move now? He's not quite close enough. And Hansen furious with the strategy. He was hoping he was going to come out into some fresh air, and the team haven't managed that. Ideally they would have wanted that stop to be a second or two quicker, so he would have found himself in a little bit more cleaner air in front of Hart. But he has got a little bit of tyre delta. Hart is going to be boxing at the end of this lap. And Hansen's trying to pit, and we saw the pair of them go off. So what has happened there? They're both off. So Hart comes around the corner. He's going to pit. Hansen, even though he knows full well, because the team have told him that he's going to pit, goes down the inside. That's caused Hart to be hung out to dry, really, by Hansen. At the same time, René Rast is pitting. And we're driving on board with Van Dorn to see if we get a better look at it. So Rast goes for pit lane and then has to swerve to avoid Hart. And now he's stuck out. He's going to have to do another lap now, I think, because he's missed pit entry. Here's Collado having to avoid Rast, who's still parked on the inside of the Paratada. Interestingly, the stewards have gone with no further action. But I feel there is going to be a lot of talk around that incident. It's definitely cost Rast. It's also cost Hart, who was on course for points, and Hansen, who was essentially the catalyst for that incident, gets away scot-free in second position. But back with the leader, Kamui Kobayashi, and after all the chaos and shenanigans going on behind, has got a 3.1 second advantage over Hart. Van Dorn in the background. Here's Newgarden, who's coming into pit from 4th position. Obviously Newgarden having a bit of an off-track excursion earlier. Here's Stoffel Van Dorn, who is actually under pressure now from Ella Lloyd. So Lloyd is going for a podium position, and this is legit, as we saw earlier. This is genuine pace from Team Wales. Though I can't remember, I think Lloyd may may still need to pit. I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, no, I think she did actually pit already. So this is third position on the cards for Ella Lloyd. So as it says there, she has downforce and Van Dorn has top speed, which will mean she'll have a much better time of things round the Perotada, as you can see, closing all the way through the corner, and then coming out the corner you can see Van Dorn able to get away, but the slipstream, such a big advantage here down this start-finish straight. She weaves it one way, she weaves the other way, but unable to get through. So Van Dorn with the upper hand down the start-finish straight. Now, can Lloyd find a way through? But here is Hansen. I thought for a moment then he was going to be having another little bit of a off-track moment, but still okay. And there's a bit of a lock-up there for Van Dorn, but luckily it was in an area where Lloyd was unable to find a way through. But that's not going to help in terms of tyre degradation. Lloyd all over the back of the Belgium. And Team Wales, who were more than likely on course for relegation, they're having a final hurrah in these last few races. And somewhat unlucky for them, have found an unlocked performance just at the wrong moment. But Ella Lloyd back in the slipstream once again on Van Dorn, still trying to find a way through. Is she going to dive down the inside this time again? Unable to get through on the Belgium driver. Here's Bourdais going off. So Bourdais off and into the barriers, and that was a big hit there for the Frenchman. And the car has ground to a halt, so Sebastian Bourdais out of the race. Currently not one of the championship contenders, and there's Elfyn Evans off. So Evans off into the gravel trap at the Perotada. Now what has happened there as he rejoins? Down start finish straight, and you can see Stuvik just going through, and that's Hart off. So Hart off. They're all falling off at the moment. And that's allowed Lee Wataragu through into 12th position. So points there for Team Thailand. And here's Ella Lloyd once again, and still unable to find a way through into that third position. It's so close. And it's just the way the car is set up and the dynamic of this circuit, really. As where she is fast, there is nowhere for her to get through, unless Van Dorn is pressured into a mistake. We've already seen a few mistakes creep out from the Belgium. But back with our leader, Kamui Kobayashi, and Hansen has actually closed. The gap was 3.1 seconds, it is now 2.3 seconds. Traffic playing a major role, as you can see the second car in shot there. And once again you can just see Lloyd pretty much glued to the back of Van Dorn as they come out of the Perotada. Once again, Van Dorn with the advantage of top speed. And again, Lloyd swarming all over the back of that Belgium car, but still not able to find a way through. Further on ahead, that's Hansen going through on, I think that was Jack Aitken. It was definitely one of the Team Scotland cars, but now Kobayashi and Hansen, you can see Kobayashi just up ahead. What is the gap as they come through the next intermediate, which is just on the exit of this corner, I believe. So they come across before the Perotada. A bit of an odd place to have an intermediate just before the final corner, but they'll come across the line. And the gap is 2.3 seconds. So the gap coming down between Kobayashi and Hansen. Van Dorn looks as though he's had a better time of it this time round. He's not got Lloyd all over the back of him and has got a car length between the pair of them. But still, not giving up is the Welsh girl. And Stuvik struggling for grip there. Sounded as though wasn't quite in the right gear for that corner. As Hansen continues to gradually close in on Kobayashi. Remember, Hansen has got a small tyre advantage, although he's lost 2 tenths in that sector. Lloyd, once again, trying to find a way through, this time trying to go through at the Perotada. That's not going to work. And still, very much in the slipstream of Van Dorn. Van Dorn closing in on Aitken now. Will this have any sort of bearing on whether or not Lloyd can come through? So great defence there. Van Dorn very much under pressure and wants quiet from the team. Still, you can just see how Lloyd is just able to turn that front end into the corner a lot better than what Van Dorn can do, and just pulls car lengths on him through the corners, but as soon as they go onto a straight, all that advantage is taken away. Hansen has managed to close a little bit this lap, although he's made a mistake I think there, because he's lost 6 tenths in one sector alone. And here's Lloyd going to try it down the inside once again, and that's a lot closer there from Lloyd on Van Dorn, but still unable to get through. Hansen still trying to find a way. Here's Collado under pressure now from Rast. Rast's going to try and go through. It's actually Heifeld. My apologies. So Heidfeld on Collado for that 8th position. It looks as though that's going to be job done there for the German driver, who has showed a lot of pace since he's joined the championship, but he's not necessarily had the luck to go with it. Very much like his racing career. Here's Hansen still trying to find a way to close in on Kobayashi. Still gradually bringing that gap back down. And he is bringing it back down. It's now down to 2.5 as they come around the Perotada once again. So 2.5 is the gap. And here is Lloyd trying to find a way through on Van Dorn. Van Dorn is now caught up onto the back of the Team Scotland car of Jack Aitken. So Aitken allows, and here's Friends, and he's about to go off into the barriers, is he? And indeed he hits the wall big time there. So I can't imagine that car's healthy enough to carry on, and indeed it isn't. So Friends, yet another retirement as you see the leaders come through. I guess luckily for them that means it will be one less back marker to deal with. But Hansen has had a bit of a regroup. He's still continuing to gain a tenth here and there on Kobayashi. And Lloyd, who's not been as lucky getting through on Jack Aitken, has lost touch with Van Dorn. A bit of a breathing space there for the Belgian, who looks pretty solid in his third position and in his defence against Lloyd. For everyone, you can see in the background Van Gisbergen and Dixon 5th and 6th. They are 6th and 8th in the championship. And that's an off there for... That's Lloyd, I think. And it is Lloyd. Poor old Ella Lloyd, who'd been spending most of the race fighting for that third position and just pushing too hard to try and regain the gap that had been created from the lap traffic, and she's just going to continue to plummet down the order and most likely isn't going to score points as she's still stuck there. So it's Lee Warrant-Ragu going into the barriers, but luckily able to carry on. 11th place at the moment for the Thai driver, and that's going to be all very important for this relegation battle between Thailand and Scotland, as Lloyd is still stuck there in 19th position, so it isn't going to be any points there. And the leaders are coming through now, so Kobayashi and Hansen, and still stuck in the middle of the road now is Lloyd. Now this is a very sticky situation, and she's still unable to spin turn the car. She's going to try to do it now. She's gone a lap down and is finally back on her way, but down in 20th position. Here's Van Gisbergen now, promoted up to 4th as a result of Lloyd going off. Has managed to find a way through on Jack Aitken. Dixon not too far behind, and this is going to be good news for another position for Dixon in this all-important championship. Just somehow, whatever championship Dixon is in, he just ends up being there or thereabouts in the championship battle. Rast not having the best of races. Pagano, again, not having a good result. And Yamamoto out of the race. So Hansen will certainly take the championship lead, with potentially Van Dorn moving up into second place. Potentially, let's see what the gap is on Van Dorn. Actually, it is 20 points between himself and Yamamoto, so we'll be level on points as it stands at the moment. Sorry, no, I'm reading the points wrong. It's 16 points there for his current third position, so he won't go into second position. So come across the line. Three laps remain here in Mexico City. Kobayashi still leads. 2.1 seconds is the advantage. Hansen has been closing, but not quick enough. So Aitken and Lloyd a lap down, and you can see a lot of retirements there. And it's just all about staying on track. If you stay on track, you're pretty much odds on for points. Pagenaud has managed to come back through into 14th after the off-track excursion he had earlier. Rast in 12th after having being involved in 2 incidents. Rast would be very annoyed with how things go. Obviously, the teams can choose to protest anything that's happened in the race. And potentially Team Germany might be protesting Team England on the pit entry incident from earlier, but we will see. As Ella Lloyd, very frustrated, and that's Kobayashi going off! Kobayashi off into the wall hard, that's got to be a retirement there, and just ahead of Hansen, so Hansen takes the lead, which promotes Van Dorn into second, and that will bring him level on points with Yamamoto. That will put Van Gisbergen up into 3rd position and Dixon into 4th. And Palou, another championship contender, up into 5th. So this is all starting to come together quite nicely as the championship goes, as we come to Barber. And as Hansen comes around the corner of Perotada, he will have 1 lap to go. And as we see there, so far we haven't had a driver finish first in both the sprint and the main event. Van Dorn very much thinking whether or not the stewards are going to look into that incident that I said about earlier, because although Hansen could win, it may not stand, as Lee Wataragu under pressure now from Rast, as Rast tries down the inside as he tries to find his way into the top 10 as he comes across the line. Again, to start the final lap, and going to be easy pickings there. He's already done it once this race on Lee Wataragu, he's going to do it once again. And that's 10th position for the German driver. Hart, another driver caught up in that incident. He's not too far behind Lee Wataragu, but I feel that he's going to run out of laps, as Heidfeld looked to be going a bit wide there. But here is Philip Hansen across the line to win here in Mexico City, ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn. Now, questions will be asked going into the stewards' room. Will we see Van Dorn promoted into 1st position? We will wait to see. But Van Gisbergen, as it stands, 3rd position, Dixon 4th, and Palou 5th. And round, Alex Duns finishes 7th. Very important points there for Team Ireland, although it's going to be a struggle for them to find any chance through. There's Ella Lloyd coming across the line, and she will be really kicking herself over what could have been. Pagenaud comes over the line in 12th position, not the day at the office he wanted. Evans takes the final point there in 15th. We wait for Stuvik and Kirkwood. Only 17 drivers finishing on the lead lap, with Aitken and Lloyd still going round. But confirmation there, as it stands for the moment, Philip Hansen wins ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn and Shane Van Gisbergen in 3rd. Scott Dixon came through into 4th position, with Alex Palou in 5th, James Clouder 6th, Alex Dunn in 7th. René Rast came through to recover to 8th, Lee Wataragu in 9th, Max Hart 10th, Simon Pagenaud 11th, Nick Heidfeld was 12th, and Paul de Resta was 13th. Moving further on down the order, in the race. There weren't that many left running, but the ones that were left running was Elvin Evans, Sandy Stuvik, Cal Kirkwood in 16th, and Jack Aitken 17th. Ella Lloyd, the final car to cross the line, with Kobayashi being confirmed in 19th. However, he had that accident. And then we go to the retirements. Robin Friends, Sebastian Bourdais, and Yamamoto, our championship leader, going out with the transmission failure. Charles Weerts with the accident, De Vries also crashing, Junkadea crashing, and Joseph Newgarden with a disqualification. And with that, it is back to Chris.
Well, what an impressive round it has been for Philip Hansen. He walks away winning both the sprint and the feature races. Absolutely incredible. The only person to have done that. He actually walks away with 38 points from this round alone. Isn't that just amazing? But that race was full of carnage. Absolutely full of it. With many, many incidents. Kamui Kobayashi with literally 2 laps to go, binning it. Quite a surprise. It must have been a surprise for Philip Hansen. But the win is not quite there. To see what the stewards and that say after the race. If there is one, should there be? But for now, what an impressive performance from Philip Hansen. And what does that do to the championship? As I said earlier, 38 points he has acquired today, and he is now leading on 207 points, with the nearest rivals, Stoffel Vandoorne and Yamamoto, both 24 points behind. The maximum amount of points that a driver can get is 42 in each round, so there's still 42 points to go. A lot of people are still in it. René Rast included in 4th on 178 points. Scott Dixon on 176, 31 behind Pagenaud, 32 behind on 175. Palou 172, 35 points behind. Shane Van Gisbergen 171, and now everyone else has been eliminated. Kamui Kobayashi on 126, Sandy Stuvik in 10th on 120, Nick De Vries on 115, Justin Newgarden 112, Paul de Resta and 94 points, and Daniel Gadea joined him on 94 points, Robin Friends 83, Alex Dunn with an impressive weekend in the feature race there, 80 points, Sebastian Bourdais at 79 points, James Calado 72, Carl Larson 68, Dries Van Tor 54, Alfred Evans, what an annoying feature race that was for him, but he's on 49 points, Andre Rosser 45, Jack Aitken 44, Max Hart 40 points, Natalie Lee went to Navarro 32, and Ella Lloyd with a good round, even with the spin at the end. He still got good points in the sprint, and 29 points. And then there's Charles Weerts, 23 points. And then we have Nick Heidfeld, 17 points. And everyone else is not really relevant at the minute because some of them are technically driving at the minute. Some of them on 0 points, but now we can see what the nation's standings looks like. New Zealand, 33 points ahead. I believe there's 72 points left in the championship. If you get a 1-2 pole sprint, fastest and fastest lap, so still much to be said. And then Japan 33 points behind on 314, England 68 points behind 279, everyone else sadly has been eliminated. Spain on 266, Belgium 261, France 254, Germany 251, Netherlands 201, USA 180. Now this is where it gets interesting. Thailand were previously 9 points ahead of Scotland in the relegation race. They're now 14 points ahead of 152, with Scotland on 138. Ireland had a good weekend though on 120, and Wales on 78. After all that, I need some kind of thing to cool off, because there was so much carnage and so much drama in this penultimate round, and there's one round to go in this season, and that will be at the Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama, United States of America, same day, same time, in a fortnight's time. Please join us for that. Thank you so much for watching this round. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm Chris Kavanagh, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator, and this is the Nations Cup signing off.